Thank you for joining us here at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities for our February webinar, the Academy for Community Inclusion, Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Program Development and Structure at Florida Atlantic University. My name is Drew Andrews, and I am the Technical Assistance Coordinator here at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. Our presenter today is Dr. Mary Lou Duffy, PhD, Professor and Project Coordinator for Florida Atlantic University Academy for Community Inclusion, which is in the Department of Exceptional Student Education and is located on the Jupiter campus. Handouts of the PowerPoint can be downloaded from the chat section that you can access by clicking the chat icon, which looks like a speech bubble, down on the bottom of the Zoom window. And they're also available, will also be available on our website afterwards. So if you just take your cursor and go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see some icons. And if you click on the one that says chat, a box will appear and you'll see the handouts as well as phone numbers. If you're having trouble hearing and you want to call in, there are call-in numbers that you can call in to connect with the webinar. At the end of the webinar, you will be directed to our evaluation, and we ask you to please complete so that we will have your input when planning future webinars. I also want to share the dates of our upcoming mid-year check and connect with our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs, and that will be June 26th and 27th here in Orlando, and more information will be coming out on that shortly. So at this time, I'm going to turn the webinar over to our distinguished presenter, Dr. Mary Lou Duffy, and thank you so much, Mary Lou, for taking the time to share today.
My pleasure, Drew. Welcome, everybody. So the chat box is open for you if you have questions that you need for me to stop and answer while I'm doing my presentation. I'm able to watch it and manage responding to you. So feel free to use the chat box on the side. Let's see. There's also at the bottom of the participants an icon that says raise hand. I'm going to show it to you on mine. I think you'll see it. Can you see my participant box where it says raise hand at the bottom?
No, we can't.
No? Okay. Too bad. So sorry, it's there. So there's a raise hand button there, and if I raise my hand, you can see next to my name on the participants. There you go. Thanks, Doug. And you can lower it. So if you need if you need to catch my attention, I can see it off to the side. Okay. So let me start. Gwendolyn Carey is also here. She's our curriculum specialist. She's here to answer questions. She's also trying to get her dissertation ready for defense. So I don't want to stress her too much, but she's available to answer questions. So let me tell you what we're going to do. I want to talk just briefly about different structures that you can find within post-secondary ed programs. I'm going to then turn it to specifics of talking about our program structure and how to develop a path toward a PSE. So that's my goal, basically, is to help you figure out how it is we came to the conclusions that, or we came to the decision points for designing our program. I'm going to talk about some cautions and some strategies, and all the way through, if you have questions, please ask them, but I will stop at the end and ask, do you have any questions, if there are general ones? Okay? So here I go. The research on post-secondary ed programs is short because they've only been in existence through federally funded supports since 2008. However, there are other programs that have existed before that. But there's not a lot of time to draw on a history of PSEs and what their outcomes look like. What's true about the structures of these PSEs is that it's linked to the type of the institution where the program is housed. For example, if we just divide it in half, there are technical schools and there's non-technical schools. Technical schools could be state colleges like they are here in Florida. They could be technical, they could be actually called technical schools. They could be called junior colleges. They could be private schools that offer certificates like Kaiser University. The thing that defines them is that the students in those programs are working toward industry standard certificates, meaning that there is some agency outside of the college or the university or the program that directs the skills that the individual needs to have in order to attain certification. So think of it like becoming a master carpenter. It's not the college that's teaching the carpentry skills that says what skills you need to know. It's the carpenters union and the credentialing group for carpenters that sets up the curriculum, and then the apprenticeship process and the journeyman process, and then the master carpenter process. Technical colleges, technical schools have to count clock hours, and they have to count behaviors or skills that their students have to demonstrate. That's different than in my world, where we're talking about non-technical schools like universities or colleges, where we're not necessarily teaching culinary, but what we are teaching are the functional employment skills that support occupation in the culinary area. We don't have any industry certs at FAU because there are no industry certs within the university. So we couldn't do that as a parallel for this program. Okay, does that make sense to you how the two major, there are other differentiations, but those are the two major ways to talk about the structures of PSE. Are we good on that one? I'm looking to see if we're good. Okay, no one's asking a question, so I'm assuming. All right. So let me give you some examples of how it looks in the real world. So here's a technical program, and this is the specific industry standard called a Safe Staff Food Handler. It requires 90 days. The industry sets up a 90-day experience program, so that includes the clock hours that they're supposed to be working and learning the skills, and then the time that they're supposed to be on the job. This specific certificate, the Safe Staff Food Handler, is required by most food services, hospitality, tourism, and it's seen as an entry level into the food service field to meet other higher level skills and occupations. It includes coursework, and it includes field experiences, and if you're talking to someone who works in the hospitality area, they know what it means if you are a Safe Staff Food Handler. They know what that certificate is. Outside of the industry, it may not be as well understood. I don't necessarily know what those specific behaviors are, but someone within the industry would. So in a functional employment program like the one that we have here at FAU, the undergraduate certificate in our program is called employment, and you can see it here. This is an example of our second graduate's certificate. So it's an undergraduate certificate and now it says on our certificates, it says supported community employment, and that was for George. Yay, George. It's offered through a college or a division, and our program is offered through the College of Education. It could be offered through continuing education, but in our case, it's offered through the College of Ed. It focuses on career awareness and exploration. There are varied internships. There's coursework that teach specific skills, and there are structures that we need to have in place in order to explain to employers what this means, because an undergraduate certificate in supported community employment has no meaning to people outside of our program. So that's the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome, is how do we articulate this to the public at large? Does that make sense so far? We're doing good? Okay. So how do you decide which way to go? So you're at this point where you are trying to decide whether you're going to align yourself more along the technical path or along the functional employment. So David's not here, but Dr. Grant at Southeastern University is in a unique position where he is in an institution of higher ed that has technical courses, but also the option for functional employment. So, you know, in his situation, he has an opportunity to go both ways. You can do this in a state college in the state of Florida because they have technical programs, but they could also have the functional employment skills as well. The thought process that you need to work yourself through is to decide what already exists at the IHE. So what industry certificates, if any, exist at the current institution? So I did that when we were thinking about what we should do here at FAU, and I learned that there are some certificates that we offer, but none of them make sense for the population. The certificates that we offer are typically add-on certificates to bachelor degrees, or they are specialized certificates in a very narrow field. For example, you can get your endorsement or your certificate in gifted education. It's not going to work. Or you could get a broker certificate. That's not going to work either. So our program didn't have, our university doesn't have that opportunity to either accommodate the students, or adapt the students, or modify it. In another setting, there may be industry type standards that could be used for students with intellectual disabilities. And then the next question in your head is, well, are these okay as the way they are, or do we need to adapt or accommodate and modify? It's like the last option there, because the further you move away from the industry standard, the less likely the industry will accept the certificate that you're putting forward, or the skills that the students are demonstrating when they put them forward. So you can adapt, you can accommodate, but stay away from the modifying. But that's all in the thought process of which certificates you pick. And then the next question that you want to ask is, what certificate options seem to have local appeal? And this is a new thought. This was not something that entered into my little head when we were building our program, but it's since become something that I think about. What does the area need? So I'm going to talk for a second about UCF. UCF is located in a high hospitality industry area. It would be a good move, and it is a good move because they've done this, to incorporate hospitality courses even in their program for students with intellectual disabilities. It has high local appeal. They also have in Orlando, they also have a need for computer-generated graphics. If there's a component of the computer-generated graphics program certificates that can be adapted or accommodated, stay away from modified, adapted or accommodated for individuals with intellectual disabilities, that has high appeal. So if we transfer that logic to here in South Florida, there's not a high local appeal for computer-generated graphics. That's not what we do here. Now, what we do here has a lot to do with marine biology and marine science. So if there's a series of courses, or if there's certificates at the state college that might lead to something in the area of marine science, marine biology, that has local appeal. So that's a new thought in the decision process that lately I've been thinking about how that plays into the design of a program. So now we've thought about what we might look like. The next thing is, how does this fit into the bigger picture of the institution? How is the program that you're trying to build connected to the mission of the institution for higher education? So it needs to not just have words that match, like it's not like a one-to-one correspondence of words, but what you want to look at is, what is it saying about the university? So here's FAU's mission statement is to promote the goal to equip, or promotes the goal to equip students with the necessary tools to achieve academic, personal, and career success. I can buy every single one of those words for our program. So I can say that the FAU Academy for Community Inclusion, with its mission, fits the mission of the university. And the more times that I can make it mesh the regular university's processes, then the likelihood it is that it will continue to operate within that university. It's like the strategic plan. How is this part of the strategic plan for the university? Our program fits it because this is what on the screen is what they're talking about as our strategic plan and our mission. So we use it as a program anchor. And it's kind of like hedging your bets. How can they argue with a program that equips students with the necessary tools to achieve academic, personal, and career success when that's part of the mission of the university? Our program does that too. Okay? So that's the background thinking stuff. This is what we did. So the first thing that we did in our search hunt process was to identify the key people and ask the questions, the right questions of those people. So for example, we started off with program champions, and we tried to find people who met two criteria. One, that they would be sensitive to the idea of having individuals with who represent diverse populations on campus, and individuals who carry weight within the university. So we started with the provost. We started with the dean of the College of Education. We started with the higher management areas who had some sense of buy-in. Okay, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is to figure out who it is that those people might be. But you need to develop those champions. You need to feed them with good information and invite them to all kinds of activities so they can see what their efforts are what they're producing. The next group of people that you need to have on the team is faculty to develop curriculum. So in our program, because we are not a technical program, we are a functional employment program, we had to develop curriculum that would be suitable for our students. And curriculum is one of the last things that faculty have control of within I swear, this is just me being on my soapbox, but the last thing the faculty have control of in the realm of higher education. We don't have control of the schedule. We don't have control of tuition and how much it costs, but we do control the curriculum, and we develop the curriculum. So you have to find faculty who know how to move courses through the curriculum process at the university. And from my university perspective, it starts at the individual faculty level, goes to the department, goes to the college, goes to the university curriculum committee, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, and it goes to faculty senate, and then it goes to the provost, and then it goes to the board of trustees, and that's a long path. But faculty know that path. It's hard to have someone come in from the outside and not know how that all shakes out. Then the next group of key people are the middle management people, and these folks were critical for us to figure out how to do this thing. So like, I can write curriculum till the cows come home. I can engage people who are sensitive to diverse populations, and I can get them on board. But I have no idea how to get an AL card. I have no idea how to get a student ID because I'm not a student. So talking with the academic affairs, the director of academic affairs, to talk about course numbering and student IDs and how tuition is paid and what does that mean if they pay tuition and what will they have access to. Talking to vocational rehabilitation to see how do we make our program goals mesh with their division goals, because that's really important for funding for the students. We spent time talking to academic, to student affairs, to undergraduate dean for curriculum. We talked to the registrar. We talked to everybody before we ever had a program on paper, and asked the questions: how could this work? How can we make this work? What has to happen if we want adults with disabilities to take for-credit courses on this campus? So once they gave us all those ideas, we sort of had to make a decision whether or not we could live with those suggestions, or did we have to come up with another plan. So some of the suggestions, I'm still not really down with all of them, but that's the way it is, and I'll work on them piece by piece to make sure that we get as close to being the perfect post-secondary program that we can. So can I live with those suggestions? Any questions? Okay. So then the next thing to do is to be the university faculty person that I am, and to use research to guide the way that we develop the courses. So I looked at the evidence-based practices, the high leverage strategies and practices that are useful with students with moderate to severe disabilities. And you can look at Waymeyer, and you can look at Sjogren, and you can look at Paula Kohler's model and look at all the things that they talk about as being important for working with students with moderate to severe disabilities. And it shakes out to look like this. Instruction needs to be scaffolded with plenty of performance feedback. You need to use a model of instruction that goes from concrete to representational to abstract. You need to use plenty of universal design for learning, and you need to teach technology, explicitly teach technology over and over again. There needs to be an abundance of peer mediated instruction, and there needs to be community-based instruction. So you can Google any of those. You can use Google Scholar to put those terms in there and get resources for them. I'm going to show you some right now. For instructional scaffolding, you could go to, we're going to see if this works. It usually works for me. All right, so here I have to drag it over. The Iris Center at Vanderbilt explains what instructional scaffolding is. If you're not familiar with it, this will help you understand what it is and how do you do it and what does it mean. This is a resource that you can go to for lots of different things. This is what I'm using it for, though, for instructional scaffolding. Concrete, representational, abstract. Okay, come on, you can do this. Here we go. There we go. So usually concrete, representational, and abstract talks about how we teach math. We start with a concrete demonstration of the manipulatives in hand, and then we draw our own little sticky figures of it, and then we do it with the numerals, so in an abstract manner. That's the real important part to understand, that you start with what you can touch and what you can see and what you can feel. You move to what you understand, and then you go to the abstract. That method of presentation for students with intellectual disabilities works. Okay? And then UDL. So there's lots of resources for UDL. I'm going to show you a resource that I find incredibly helpful to share not only with our group of instructors in our program, but also to share with other faculty. And this is a rubric designed from the ENACT professional development grant from a bazillion years ago, to teach faculty how to make their classes more accessible by starting with their syllabus. It talks about what a traditional syllabus looks like, and then an enhanced syllabus would change it in this way, and then here are some exemplary, like, way cool stuff. So in our coursework, our syllabi are as close to exemplary, because, we want to be the best, exemplary models as we could be. We added pictures and graphics and maps and links and things like that that make finding information more functional, not only for students with intellectual disabilities, but for any student at all. And that was what was interesting with some of the teachers who were hosting our students when we talked about some of the accommodations that they might need to employ in their coursework if they're hosting one of our students, that those things were useful for other students as well. But we know that. We're special ed people. We know that that's true. So I'm going to go close this for a sec. So these three, now they've changed colors, Caitlin. These three links will help you get to the more useful tools for instructional scaffolding, CRA, universal design. And if we're talking about peer mediated instruction, then the word is mentoring. And we learned so much about mentoring at the last institute that I couldn't even begin to talk about it here on this one slide. So I'm going to leave it at that. You can find the presentations and PowerPoints from the Winter Institute. Okay, so are we okay still? And she's smiling. Caitlin's smiling at me. Program goals. So our program, this is our specific program that the goals that we incorporated in our program from the university as well as outside agencies. So let's start with our program goals. Our program goal is to find community employment, to teach self-determination skills, and to encourage a dignified adult life for each of our students, our graduates. So the idea is that all the coursework revolves around these three components. That means when I show you the certificates, you're going to see three specific certificates, one on employment, one on self-determination, and one on adult living. We incorporated the agency goals by talking with DVR, Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, to meet their employment goals for their program plans, which means that the students need to be, or the individuals with disabilities, the clients, need to be employed for 90 days after stabilization. That's their term. And so what that means to us is that there needs to be an internship at the very end of the program that's at least 90 days long, so that VR can pick up services or supports that would follow along afterwards. Does that make sense? So we designed our internship at the end of the employment program to meet the VR goals, so now it would fit into their model of client services. By doing that, they're much more willing to participate and support our students as they matriculate through our program. Okay? The other agency that we attended to was the U.S. Department of Education, their goals. And so the U.S. Department of Education is currently the group that grants the designation of Comprehensive Transition Program, and their requirement is 50% or more in inclusive settings. And so while our courses may not be 100% inclusive, they do courses with other students as those students, they're open to other students, so they can be in there if they so desire, but their internships are in the community, their activities are in the college or the university. There are courses that they share out in the regular curriculum that everybody takes. So there's more than 50%. We approximated about 75% of our program was inclusive in nature. What does that mean? Well, it means that when it comes down to applying for a comprehensive transition program status and having the opportunity for our students to get Pell Grants and other kinds of federal financial aid, then we've built in the requirement of at least 50% inclusion. Why try to manufacture it after the fact? Have all this information before you start to build the program, that you know you need to have a 90-day internship, that you know you need 50% or more in inclusive setting. So our university goals were the next thing to incorporate. And remember what we were talking about FAU's goals being to provide academics and social and career-ready opportunities. Okay, so we can find how each of those, at our university, they're called pillars and platforms, how each of the pillars and platforms match up to some part of our program. But those were intentional, to work on those before we started the program. The hardest one to meet was the funder goals, because right now we have a funder who is the Foundation for Program Development. So in 2020, our funder leaves. It's over, the grant's finished. It was a 5-year grant. They had specific goals that they were looking for these post-secondary programs. They had funded other post-secondary programs before. So I found out what those other programs were, and I talked with those people, and yeah, so we got some insider information about what they are looking for, and then co-opted some of that language that from their goals to meet what we were doing in our program. Is that dishonest? No, because they weren't, those goals were not antithetical to what we were doing. They were part of what we were doing. We used their language, we mirrored their language, so they would know that we were on board. Point being is that all good children who run these programs have goals that they have to meet, and as many of those as you can incorporate into the foundation or the design of the program, the less you have to manipulate them later on in order to meet the benchmarks of CTP or VR support or Agency for Persons with Disabilities support. You're using them at the very beginning. Questions? So I grew up in Philadelphia and I talk really fast. I bet you didn't notice that I talked really fast, huh? Let's look at how our program is designed. So this is the picture of our 3 certificates: supported employment, supported community access, supported community living. Supported community access is our self-determination track, and the other 2 are kind of self-explanatory. We have each of these courses, SLS, whatever they are courses that exist in the state numbering system. So these courses, so you could go to the state of Florida numbering system, plunk in SLS 1305, and you can look to see which colleges and universities teach SLS 1305. And when you see the one that says FAU, that's us, and you can see all the objectives for that course. So I'm just throwing that right out there. If you want to, you won't see the activities, and you won't see the measures or how we measure outcomes and standards, but you will see all the objectives for each of these courses because they are within the state numbering system. And that's the important thing to understand, is that these courses exist already within the state system of courses. So you can back out and look and get ideas on which courses look like the ones that you want to teach. They may not. Every class that's listed as 1305 is not called professional career development. It just is called that at FAU, right? So these are the tracks that they work through. This is where they start. Our students come in a cohort, and we only admit in the fall of each year. They take these 3 courses together. One's a self-determination course, one's a career exploration course, and one is on how to use the technology that we have at FAU. Those are to help us learn more. The probationary semester at the very beginning is to help us learn more about the students and to know whether or not they want to come to the program or their mom wants them to come to the program, or their dad. At the end of the first semester, they conduct their own student planning meeting, where it's our person-centered planning component. So they invite whomever it is that they want to come to the meeting, and they present their goals, their steps to meeting those goals, their strategies for overcoming barriers, and then we as a group talk about what certificates might be most appropriate for them. So everybody comes in knowing that this could be their one and only time that they're in college. They're all knowing that this is a first probationary semester. At the end of that semester, then they decide where they're going to go, whether it's one certificate. Everyone takes a supported employment certificate if they're working with VR. If they're not working with VR, they can take any certificate they want. That doesn't mean that if you're working with VR, you can only take employment. You can take the other ones as well. We just have to work with their counselor to get that to happen. But at the student planning meeting, then we figure out which of the certificates they're going to work on. The students also take, in the second semester when they come back, they take Health Fitness for Life, which is a regular program. I was a special ed teacher for so long that I call it regular classes and special ed classes. So in the general curriculum, Health Fitness for Life is for every freshman and sophomore. So they get to meet lots of wonderful people in that class. We are in the process of formalizing the personal fitness component of, which is the next step after Health Fitness for Life. The other thing that we do that's part of our program structure is Launchpad, which is kind of like homeroom, but it's more for safety and security. So in Launchpad, we get them used to being on campus. We show them around to where they need to be, or where they need to go, or where they might want to go. We talk about what's happening on campus this week, and we make sure that they learn how to check in, check out. That's our security method with using a smartphone, cell phone. If you look at this certificate track here, you'll see that there are electives at the bottom, and you'll notice at the very bottom here, it says that within this track, students need to select 2 elective classes, and one must be outside of the academy. What we thought was a high bar was to have one class outside the academy. Most of the students take more than one, just because they're interested in it. And they can take any class that they want, that fits, that works, whose host teacher is on board. Questions? Okay. So this is what a single track program looks like, and this is what we call our flight plan. Every student at FAU has a flight plan. So our students at the academy have flight plans, and it talks about what they need to take each semester so they can plan, just like any other student, what they're going to take. And you can see from beginning to end, it takes about 6 semesters to complete the program, with internship being at the very end, which is a 90-day minimum of course of work in place. There are internships, there are field experiences throughout the program for the employment track, going from a very close to campus model, where the employment might be on campus or right by the campus, to an internship that's nearer their home, which is usually away from campus. So there's the thank you for participating thing. I put this in the wrong place, Caitlin, but I'm going to go to questions and say, any questions now, y'all? Caitlin wanted to be sure that you knew that you should evaluate my program. Oh, how much support do you need from the host teacher? That varies. So Caitlin Abernathy wants to know, how much support do we need from the host teacher? That varies from course to course and from student to student. So our students, when they take a course in the general curriculum, they have the option of taking it for credit or as an audit. If it's audit, then we do more support. We provide more support, meaning that Gwen, who's here or on the road or whatever, would be the person who would contact the host teacher and negotiate the placement of the student in that class. She would also then share the syllabus, or they would share the syllabus back and forth and identify which of the class activities and objectives are important for this student to have some knowledge of, or they differentiate the instruction, is basically what I'm saying, and identify which things are important for everyone to know. Then they come up with a method for how are those behaviors that a student's supposed to demonstrate, how are they going to be measured? I'll give you a concrete example. In a Spanish literature class, one of our students took a Spanish literature class, and he was supposed to do a report. Instead of doing a report, he did a PowerPoint, and instead of doing the PowerPoint for the entire class, because he was so nervous, he shared the PowerPoint with the teacher on the topic that he was supposed to be researching. So that's the level of modification. Other students take it for a grade, and there's minimal support that we need, but they can get that through Office for Student Accessibility, or they can get that with support with their advisor. We usually teach them how to use some type of technology to read the textbooks using Natural Reader or some other tools. So Caitlin Abernathy, does that sound like what you want to know? Yes, Renee, the presentation's up above. It's already there for you. Kimberly Walsh, is there some type of assessment tool and or list of questions we use to assist in identifying appropriate technical workforce programs? And I don't know of any, because those would be based on what the school produces, what they have there. So you have to start with what's available at that technical institute, technical college, and then look to see what the students' typical interests are, and then do that local appeal thing. What are the potential for jobs?
I have a question, Mary Lou.
Okie dokie.
You talked about aligning with the university mission, and that very clear. And the path that the university is taking, and you talked about looking for looking for leaders who would have buy-in. Mm-hmm. Do you have any more any suggestions you could give to folks whenever they're trying to find that champion or trying to find a leader that's going to support them and that they can work with as they're discussing this? Because so many folks, you know, it's still relatively new. They don't know what the program's going to look like, but they know that it's something that would be beneficial to their campus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could you just talk about it from that point some?
I can do my best. So one advantage that I have here at FAU is 23 years at the university and 20 years on this campus. And so I know everybody. They know my face, I know them. So there's the advantage of the native versus the immigrant. I can go up to a person and I can talk with them about, oh, I have this wonderful student that I'd really like you to meet. And, you know, and I picked the right student for the right person. So it's a person-to-person kind of connection. We did the exact same thing when we were talking about finding champions and finding the right kinds of support people. I didn't go to the the fact that I can tell you this is all okay. It's all okay that I'm telling you this. I didn't go to the vice president of academic affairs. I went to the campus director of academic affairs because I could talk with her about what this might look like here on this campus. And she could get a vision of what it would look like here. So making it clear to them what it looks like in this place, in this moment with these students and how many and who will be here to support and what are we going to ask of you and your department. Personalizing it is I think the best way, Drew, to get to the point of connecting with that individual. It's also helpful to look at what do those people really do. So the host faculty that we select for classes, besides it being an interest of the student, we also look at the faculty who are known across campus as being student advocates. We're not going to pick the faculty member who doesn't show up to do, you know, faculty staff soccer game, or who you don't see at the ice cream social or whatever the event is on campus, you know. So we're going to talk to the people first who are most engaged with the students. And just like we did way back in the dark ages, Drew, when we were doing inclusion in elementary and middle schools, we looked at the teachers who were most receptive and we engaged them first, and then they told somebody else about how wonderful it was to have this student in their class or how wonderful it is to see these students on campus. Our campus is very odd in that it's an honors college campus, meaning that most of the students are all rocket scientists. And then there's our students who are wonderful students, but they're not going to be rocket scientists. But they mix really well. It works for some reason, and it's just the makeup of this campus. And I think it's the size of the campus and the connection that the faculty have with the students.
Great. And real quickly, how many mentors do you have?
Well, so we have. I think that we have. I don't know if Gwen's still here. She is.
We have 19 or 20 peer mentors at the moment that are with 36 students.
Thank
35
you.
students.
So our rule of thumb is that brandy spanking new students get their own mentor. And as much as possible, we stick to that rule. Students who are matriculating and have been here a couple years, 3 years, whatever, they may share their mentor with someone else. Or they may choose not to have a mentor. It's up to them, because they've already got a whole posse that they travel around with.
Right.
Right.
I also wanted to mention that Jane Silveria put over in the chat box about My Career Shines, which is the Florida tool for career planning. Mm-hmm. And most students take that. There's lots of great interest inventories in there, and lots of students take that at middle school. But it's a cool site that could be used with young adults also. And so that's just a resource that's there to look at. And it's floridashines.org. And then you just go in there to find a career. Well, I want to thank you Mary Lou, for a wonderful webinar and for sharing with us about the Academy for Community Inclusion. I would like to encourage everyone to click on the link that you see in the chat box for the webinar eval, and that's the one that starts out HTTP, and then it's a bit.ly FCSUA webinar eval 2519, and the slides and the link to the YouTube recording of this webinar will both be on our website under past events by tomorrow mid-morning. And so if you'd like to share this with somebody, or you know someone that was planning to be here that wasn't able to join, they'll be able to see the webinar and also look at all the webinars that we have from the past, because all of those are archived there. And then real quickly, I just wanted to tell you that our webinar in March will be on March 5th, and that will be again at 3 p.m. And that will be Dr. Kim Spence from the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities here at UCF. And the topic is going to be sexuality, personal safety, and sex education for students with intellectual disabilities at the post-secondary level. And so the registration will be out for that soon, so be looking for that. And again, thank you so much, Mary Lou, and thank you, Gwen, for your input, and best of luck in the next few weeks as you finish your dissertation. So
thank you, Drew. I appreciate that. One more thing, we have our annual open house next Tuesday in Jupiter from 10 to 1, and it is an opportunity for anyone who wants to come down and see the program in action to learn all of the details.
Thank you for mentioning that, Gwen. I meant to mention that myself. So if you need more information about that, you can either contact Dr. Mary Lou Duffy or Gwen Carey or myself, and would be happy to share information. That's next week at the FAU Jupiter campus.
The beautiful FAU Jupiter campus.
Yes, definitely it is. I was there and it certainly was. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Can I stop the recording?
I'm gonna
Okay.
I want to leave the chat box up for just a minute, but I am gonna stop the recording. Okay.